Meet the new Audi Q3. It's smarter, it's stronger, but most importantly, it's noticeably larger than before, which is amazing because it's still a very small little SUV. Now, for 2019, it's grown by about 3.8 inches overall, which for a lot of vehicles would mean almost stepping up to the next segment. But because the previous generation was so Lilliputian to begin with, its new 176.5-inch length feels about just right for the subcompact crossover segment. Let's hit the road. Now, in addition to being longer, the new Q3 is also a tad bit wider and a little bit taller. And that extra exterior dimension adds up to more space on the inside for cargo and people, with the seats folded flat cargo capacity growing to about 23.7 cubic feet, almost a 50% gain over the previous generation. Now, I say between those numbers because, like the Lincoln Corsair that I drove recently, the Q3's second row is a slider, able to move about 6 inches fore or aft, and giving drivers the choice between more legroom on the second row when they need it, or more cargo capacity when they don't. Sometimes you got a baby seat back there, and last time I checked, babies don't need a whole lot of legroom. Now, when you're dealing with a vehicle this small, every cubic inch of people space that you gain is a valuable one. So I'm glad to report that even the front row is a little bit more spacious in the Q3. But I'm even more impressed with the level of fit and finish that the dashboard has gotten for this generation. What I'm looking at here looks a whole lot like something you'd see in a much larger vehicle, from the A6 all the way up to the A8, with the same technology in the dashboard, including a 12.3-inch version of Audi's virtual cockpit, able to do things like display satellite maps, show a conventional digital instrument cluster, or this really interesting dynamic gauge cluster that I've got going on right here. It's really neat looking. Now, next to it, we've got a 10.1-inch version of Audi's MMI Touch infotainment. Now, this is the same software that you'll find in the flagship A8 and Q8 vehicles, with a couple of differences aside from the smaller screen. The biggest difference is that there's no second screen below it. That's a little bit of a step down if you like flashy things, but it's a bit of a step up if, like me, you like physical climate controls. And it just means that you'll have to do all of your inputs on this main screen with the same software-esque interface that I already like. The second difference is a little bit difficult to illustrate, and that is that the haptic response that you get on the dual screen system isn't here. You still get a little audible click when you tap somewhere on the screen, but you don't get that sort of feeling of pushing the display like an actual button and the tactile click that you feel in your fingertip. Now, as somebody who spent a whole lot of time with that system, this is a little bit of a step down because I really like it. But unless you're the kind of person that has a whole bunch of brand new Audis in your garage and you do back-to-back drives, I don't think most people are going to notice it. Especially if you use a lot of Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Those are both standard, and the haptics don't work with those systems anyway, so you'll definitely not miss it there. Now, there are a variety of engine and powertrain options available globally, but here in the States, we only got one to pick from, and that's the 45 TFSI Quattro, which mates a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, the same one that you'll find in the Volkswagen GTI, with an 8-speed automatic transmission and Audi's Quattro all-wheel drive. With about 228 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque, this feels like a really good amount of power for a vehicle of this size, and that engine is just a peach. It feels fantastic under most driving conditions, even when expressing itself through an 8-speed automatic. The gearbox in question is a smooth one. In its comfort setting, it still feels very responsive and mostly stays out of your way, but in its dynamic mode, it really comes alive with quick, sharp shifts that maybe occasionally feel a little clunky in stop-and-go traffic, but that's kind of the fun when you're in dynamic mode. Now, I mentioned that the new Q3 is a bit taller than last year, but in the States, we have an extra half an inch of ride height, bringing us to a total of 1.5 inches taller than last year, because America. And that taller ride height than the global model, combined with the fact that we also have a static suspension as opposed to the active dampers that you'll get across the sea, means that our model is tuned a little bit towards the comfort side of the performance envelope. On the bright side, that means it does a really good job of soaking up bumps, but it can feel a little bit floaty over undulations in the road, but never so much so that it feels unplanted or unstable. Now, you do have a little bit of control over the steering feel in the Q3 using the Drive Select system. Now in the comfort mode, the steering feels really overboosted, very vague. I'm not really a huge fan of this. But when you put the car into dynamic mode, you actually get a really good balance of still light steering with the responsiveness and directness that I think that most drivers are looking for in this class. So take my advice and just leave it in dynamic all the time. Or maybe use the individual setting to mix and match the dynamic steering with the more comfort-oriented powertrain setting. Overall, I am really loving this rebirth of the Audi Q3. It's large enough to be competitive, but still feels very compact and urban friendly, really small and fun to drive. The performance feels good from this powertrain, but it's still comfortable enough to be used as a daily driver. And you know how I feel about Audi's technology. I think it's the best in the business. And I think that when comparing this to something like maybe Mercedes-Benz's GLA, which I believe is now the runt of this class, or BMW's X1 or the Volvo XC40, I think I'm going to go with the Audi. Now, optioning your 2019 Audi Q3 is surprisingly straightforward for a German SUV. I mean, there's only one powertrain to look at, the 45 TFSI, and it starts at around $36,000 when you include destination charges. From there, it's just a matter of picking your options. We've gone with the S-Line Appearance package, as well as the Prestige package that's going to roll in pretty much all of the tech bells and whistles for one price. As tested, we're looking at around $44,745, close to fully loaded. Not a bad value when you consider all of the content that you're getting. But what I want to know is, what would you get for around $45,000 if you're looking for a compact SUV? Not a whole lot of choices, but let us know what you'd pick in the comments below. Before you do, hit the subscribe button for even more roadshow videos. And before you leave, maybe head on over and check out our full tech deep dive into that MMI touch response system. Maybe ignore all the bits about the lower screen though, because of course it's not in this car.